Good day. This is Deacon Don LaRose from Holy Family Church, bringing to you a few thoughts to contemplate that might be interesting, I think. You know, in this day and age, I think a significant amount of the population would probably conclude that science and religion are two separate things, that, science doesn't really or always back up religion. And that's really not true. And so I want to show you, give you some thoughts on this. Up until about the 1920s, the great bulk of the scientific community, almost everybody, believed that the universe was static, that the universe was always there. Time, space, matter, all those things were always there. But it was a Belgian cosmologist, a man by the name of George Lemontour, who was also a Catholic priest. He was the first to conclude that the universe was actually expanding outward from some central location, some central place. The universe is expanding. And he was able to calculate, expanding since when? And he calculated back to about 14 billion years, actually 13.7 billion years ago. That's when the Big Bang took place and changed the universe. Initially, not all scientists understood that or agreed, but he made presentations in 1927, published articles, and then he presented in 1931 in England to the British Association for the Advancement of Science. And slowly but surely, some of the biggest scientists in the world all started recognizing and agreeing that he was right. Einstein being a big one. Einstein had created the theory of relativity that actually proved that this concept was true, was correct. And so Einstein went from being an atheist, basically, or at least a person that had very little religious belief, to being a strong believer in God. And the same is true for some of the other biggest scientists in history. Werner Heisenberg, the father of quantum physics, he believed in God. Robert Boyle, the father of modern chemistry, he believed in God. Richard Smalley, the originator of nanotechnology, and received the Nobel Prize for chemistry in 1996. He also does. And Kurt Gödel, probably the greatest mathematician ever lived, also believes in God. And so these men all ended up believing in God, not in spite of science, but because of science. Because the science showed that the universe wasn't always there. And as the argument goes, everything that had a beginning had to have something that caused it, had to have a cause. The universe had a beginning. Now they recognized that, and so they realized something had to cause the universe to begin. And because before the Big Bang, there was no time, no space, no matter, nothing. It's hard to even imagine, how could there be no time? How could there be no space? But before the Big Bang, none of it existed. And so something that existed before anything existed had to be the creator. And as God told Moses, when Moses asked him, "What's your name?" God just described himself as, "I am who am." He's always been there. And so this theory was, showed that the universe was expanding outward from a central point. Another thought about the universe is this: how big and massive it is, and so how incredibly powerful God and intelligent God had to be to create it. There was a telescope / camera, basically, that went into space a number of years back, just recently, and it was called the Hubble Extreme Deep Field Photography Telescope. And it captured photos and information, data, on just 32 billionths of the universe, 32 billionths. So just a tiny little sliver of the universe. But in that information, it showed that within that space, within that area that it could capture, showed there were 5,500 galaxies. 5,500 galaxies just in that tiny little sliver. And they were able then to extrapolate how many galaxies there were in the entire universe. And they said there's at least 2 trillion galaxies, not 2 trillion stars, 2 trillion galaxies, each full of stars. Just mammoth, huge. Also that we know that in our own galaxy, there are 4 to 5 new stars created every year. I didn't even realize that until recently. 4 to 5 new stars in our galaxy every year. And again, they extrapolate that to the whole universe, shows that there are about 300,000 new stars that are created, that are born, 300,000 new stars created every second in the universe. So the old the notion, not the old notion, but the notion that there are more stars in heaven, more stars in the universe than there are grains of sand on earth is true. You know, think of how many grains of sand there are just on Duxbury Beach, but there are more stars in heaven, more stars in the universe than there are grains of sand on earth, and the science has proven it to be true. And so here's, you know, thinking about the small thought here is this. Anything compared to the universe is small. And it's amazing to think that this God, this creator, this all-powerful, all-knowing, you know, brilliant, ultra-brilliant creator of the universe is also a personal God to each of us. God knows each of us intimately. Think of what Jesus said. Jesus said that that not a sparrow falls to the ground without God knowing about it. He knows everything that's happening. And think what Jesus said to his apostles when he was sending them out and his disciples to go out and start evangelizing. And they were scared, you know, going places they hadn't gone before, not knowing kind of reception they're going to receive, which wasn't always positive. He said, have no fear. The Father knows every hair on your head. Saying that God knows you. He's aware of everything about you all the time, every second that you're alive, so you are not alone. And for each of us then, I think the final thought is that we should go about our lives with no fear, because this ultra-powerful, ultra-intelligent being, this God of ours, is intimately aware of us. He knows every hair on our heads, and we are not alone. Thank you.